Hello friends, welcome to Knowledge India once again. In this tutorial, we are going to talk about different infrastructure as code platforms. Now, I'm sure you would have watched some of other videos on our channel where we have explained that what infrastructure as code means and how does it help you. If you have not watched those, you can always go ahead and watch it. You'll find the link in the description below or press on the I button. In this video, we are going to compare some of the most popular infrastructure as code options, and we will try to answer those questions which people generally want to understand, that in which scenario we should go ahead and use which infrastructure as code option and which one is best. You know, is there really anything like best? So we'll try to answer all such questions here. Okay, as you can see on the screen, we have taken up 5 options and we'll compare them. So let's go ahead. Infrastructure as code basically means creating and managing your resources not with a manual process but with the help of code. Now, it is very simple. You go ahead and write the details of all your infrastructure which you want to create in a file. It could be JSON file, it could be a YAML file, it could be some other format as well, depending on the platform which you are choosing. Feed the template and your resources get created. And please understand, infrastructure as code is not only about provisioning your resources one time and then forgetting it. It can also help you to modify the resources, right? To to any other state, or with any other new attributes if you want. For example, if you have, let's say you have gone ahead and created a machine with a particular size. If you want to change the size of the machine later on, you can go ahead and do that as well. The same way, if you want to do things like um, adding certain permissions to a user, to an IAM user which you have created, you can go ahead and do that as well with infrastructure as code. So there's a lot of benefit, of using infrastructure as code, of course, and you guys know it. Now let's come to the comparison. In this comparison, we have tried to pick up some of those factors which are really important and people talk about it a lot. Some of these are those factors as well which are not properly understood. So on the left hand side, you will be able to see all the factors which we have considered, and on the top row, you can see the different infrastructure as code options, which you might be aware of. So we have picked up AWS CloudFormation, which is an AWS native thing, Azure Resource Manager, Azure stuff, Google Deployment Manager offered by Google, and then we have picked up Terraform and Pulumi. These two are third-party products, right? Terraform is from HashiCorp and Pulumi is from Pulumi. That is the company. I'm not sure if many of you have heard about that, but Pulumi is there in the field for past couple of years at least. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Now, first parameter is whether it is native to a particular cloud provider. And why is this factor important? If a particular platform is native to a cloud provider, the support for any new service or for any new feature would come first of all to that particular platform. I mean, you can be sure because, for example, if a new attribute is added by AWS, you can be sure that, of course, CloudFormation will support it. There are high chances that it will be supported quite soon. So that is one thing. And of course, if you see Terraform or Pulumi, they are not just native to one cloud provider. So they can actually go ahead and work with multiple cloud providers. Now that's another aspect, right? Whether AWS CloudFormation, Azure Resource Manager, and Google Deployment Manager, can they work across clouds? Answer is no. They can work only for their own cloud. So, you know, so that is first factor to understand. Now, people may ask that, oh, so that means straight away we should go ahead and use Terraform or Pulumi, isn't it? But see, you cannot just decide on that one factor. Let us go through all the factors and understand it. Of course, if you have, if you have infrastructure in multiple clouds, then it makes sense to go ahead and choose a platform with which you can go ahead and write, uh, you know, with which you can go ahead and write the code and of course build infrastructure in multiple cloud platforms. But that also is not just very straight answer in this format that okay, if you have multi-cloud, then just go ahead with Terraform or with Pulumi, because many of the times you may choose to just go ahead and use CloudFormation in AWS and Azure Resource Manager in Azure. So that is also possible. So let's look at other factors as well. Next is declarative or programming. You might be knowing AWS CloudFormation. The way you write the code is it is in JSON or it is in YAML format, right? So it's a declarative format, right? For example, if you want 10 resources, you write about those 10 resources one after another. You write their attribute and the values for those resources. That's how you define different blocks in your template file. So whether you take CloudFormation, ARM, Google Deployment Manager, or even Terraform, the way you write the code, it is declarative in nature. In case of Terraform, they have HashiCorp configuration language, which is something which they have developed, of course, their own language which they have developed. But if you go ahead and compare, it's very much like JSON only. Okay. So the point is that for the first four items, it is declarative in nature. So if you have a programmer in house, you have a developer. That developer probably knows Java, PHP, or maybe C# or things like that. If you ask that developer to write code in these things, that guy will have to learn a new language, though it's not very difficult, but he'll have to learn that language. Whereas Pulumi, by it, from the very start, the approach which they have taken is that they allow you to write code in most of the famous or most used languages. So you can go ahead and write it either in Java or in Python or any other language which are mostly used. They have support for so many languages. So now you can think, right? If you are writing code in languages like Python or Java or this sort of stuff, then you can also make use of other programming constructs, right? So for example, you can go ahead and write if else statements. You can go ahead and write loops. All such things become accessible to you immediately. So what is the result of that? The result is that for a complex infrastructure, you end up writing lesser lines of code, if you have access to programming as such. Now, though Pulumi started with that vision, um, of course, AWS, Terraform, they also have been exploring that idea. And AWS launched CDK some time back, which allows you to write, which allows you to write the code in the supported programming languages. Same way, um, January 2021, CDK support came for Terraform as well. So that may, I think they currently support only two languages, but with that, they also got into this field that you can go ahead and now write code in in a programming language instead of writing it in the form of a declaration. So they also got into that space. So the way this area is progressing, there are good chances that within few years people would be writing code using their traditional programming languages instead of learning a new domain specific language or going ahead and writing it in that clunky JSON or YAML. So that's the point there. So depending on the type of developers you have, this becomes an important factor. I hope you understood that. Next point is UI support to enable self-service. Now, whatever you are seeing at the top, all of these platforms allow you to go ahead and write your code in some form. In some form, they'll allow you to write the code. So there's a file. Now you go ahead and execute this template. They These platforms, they do give you some sort of UI where you can feed this template and then run things. But whether they also go ahead and give you a more sophisticated UI, the answer is not truly yes for everything. Now let's talk about AWS. In AWS, you have CloudFormation and you can use Service Catalog. AWS Service Catalog is another service. So you write your template in AWS CloudFormation and put it behind AWS Service Catalog. Now Service Catalog gives you a nice UI, to your users, and via service catalog you can actually export different standard products within your organization. For example, if let's say I want that in my organization, people should be able to create EC2, RDS, load balancer, S3 bucket, only these things and nothing else, right? And even for these 3 4 things, I will go ahead and set up certain standards which I want to enforce on every created resource. So I can go ahead and write CloudFormation template. In that, I may go ahead and bake in certain standards. For example, any EBS volume which is getting created, it is encrypted by default. Any S3 bucket which is getting created is encrypted by default. Any other thing, the way you want to apply certain tags by default, anything which you want to enforce, you can go ahead and enforce, via CloudFormation. And then you present this thing to the user with the help of service catalog, so that user gets a very simple UI, where the person will be able to go ahead and give different attribute values by choosing text box or drop down, etc., and then few steps, and the resource gets created. So that's quite good. In the same way, in Azure you have got Azure blueprints, so you can go ahead and write your code in in the form of ARM template, and then put it behind Azure blueprints, and same like service catalog, you can go ahead and expose it. Google Deployment Manager is there, so there is something called Google Private Catalog with which you can go ahead and do similar stuff. So all of these three, first three, they do give you some sort of inbuilt UI support as well, through which you can expose and enable self-service within your organization, even to those people who are not very savvy with cloud, right? But if you look at Terraform and Pulumi, they do not really give you that type of UI as such. So you need to figure out that how do you want to pass all the attributes to the code which you have written in Terraform and Pulumi. Okay, right. So depending on what you're trying to do in your organization and what are the types of users, this factor can also play a very important role in your choice. Next one is RBAC support. Trust me, this is very important, right? RBAC support, role-based access control. You want to control that who is able to provision what in your organization, right? So that becomes very important. Now, with AWS CloudFormation, ARM or Blueprints and Google Deployment Manager, you can go ahead and uh, use the identity and access management module within AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud to control who is able to provision what product. You can control that really, really well, because that is inbuilt there, right? Because these services are part of their cloud console. So you are able to manage it via IAM. It's very easy. But when it comes to Terraform or Pulumi, how will you do it? Because these are separate software. You have to install it somewhere, right? Maybe on a server, and then you have to manage things. So if you are just going with the free version, they do not give you RBAC integration by default in the free version. But if you go with a premium paid version, then yes, you have option to go ahead and integrate with your corporate identity, and then you can manage that which group has got what permissions, etc. You can do that, but that's there in the paid version. So think about it. Next one is support cost. Now, if you are using CloudFormation or Azure Resource Manager or Google Deployment Manager, and you are stuck while developing a template, or maybe because of some permission issue something is not working in your organization, you can go ahead and easily open a support ticket to AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, and get an engineer, get that thing resolved, and you are good to go. And you don't have to factor in additional support cost if you are using these three things. But on the other hand, if you are using Terraform or Pulumi, and if you want their support, then of course you need to look at the premium version, along with which support will also come. So you need to factor in the cost, that if you are planning to use it for your enterprise, and if you intend to get support, you will have to shell out some money for that. Okay. Next is DevOps support. Now, many of the times I've heard that people talk that only if you go with certain tools, like whenever people are talking about um, tool transformation, technology transformation type of things, right? So people say that, oh, you are still creating resources from the console, or why don't you just go ahead and get started with Terraform, right? Um, because and then they integrate with that the whole theory of DevOps. So please understand, guys, uh, you can go ahead and implement DevOps practices, whether you are developing your code in CloudFormation or ARM or Google Deployment Manager or Terraform or Pulumi. It doesn't matter in which in which platform you are going ahead and using and developing your code. You can go ahead and implement DevOps practices, which means you make sure that you maintain your repository properly, people commit their code, they comment things properly, you maintain branches properly. You can do all of that. Doesn't matter which platform you choose out of all of these. So please do not get confused when people say that only if you choose a particular platform, then only you will be able to bring the DevOps culture for your infrastructure thing in your organization. It doesn't really work that way. At the end, all of these platforms or products allow you to write code in one format or the other. And if you're writing code of any sort, then if you understand DevOps, you can guess that you can go ahead and do it, isn't it? So that's another point. The last one is integration with CMP. So CMP is cloud management platform. There are a lot of CMPs out there in the market, and many of the times you would want to, I mean, certain organizations want to use a CMP. Typically in those scenarios where either they have some custom requirements, or if they have multiple cloud vendors within their state, then they might want to have a CMP layer above all, so that they don't have to get into multiple cloud consoles. So if you are looking at a CMP solution, there are high chances that most of the CMPs would be supporting Terraform and Pulumi, because these are more widely used, you can say, infrastructure as code platforms. And no doubt in saying this, that Terraform did some of the good things quite early, in this space. So for example, drift detection was available in Terraform, like many years back. Also, you had drift detection facility available there. Whereas if you look at CloudFormation, of course, in CloudFormation also it is available now, but it came a bit late. So that's what it is. So if you are thinking about using a CMP, there are high chances that Terraform and Pulumi code can be reused there, with slight modification. I'm not saying that they would not accept CloudFormation or ARM or deployment manager code, but that depends from CMP to CMP. I'm just saying the chances of them reusing the Terraform code or Pulumi code would be higher. That's all I'm saying, right? So those were the factors which I wanted to bring here in front of you. Many of the times people also say that, what, because I am using AWS and Azure both, so that's why I'll go ahead and use Terraform, because then with one language I'll be able to write for both the cloud providers. That is true, that you will be able to use Terraform and you'll be able to write the code for AWS and Azure both. But please understand one thing very properly. It would not happen that you write, let's say, 10 or 20 lines of code to create a VM in AWS, and then you go ahead and run the same code and it will create a VM in Azure. That way it doesn't work. Okay, you will have to use the correct provider. If you are writing a file, or if you are writing a block of code which should work for AWS, you use the correct provider and you write the code for AWS resources, and then there can be another block where you are writing the code for Azure resources. It is perfectly possible that within one file you are writing few resources of AWS and few other resources of Azure. That is possible. Yes, but if anywhere, in your mind you think that you will write a piece of code and the same piece of code will create resource in AWS also, and it will go ahead and create the equivalent resource in Azure as well, because some people have asked me that. So that would not happen. Please do not get confused there. Okay, so uh, overall, this is a comparison, and I hope that when you are choosing choosing the next platform for your organization, you are not just considering one factor, which is whether I'm using one cloud or multiple cloud. There are other factors as well which you should consider, and they can play a very important role depending on the size of your organization, and and how mature your organization is. You should go ahead and invest money in the infrastructure as code platform. Okay, so with that, I will go ahead and end this video. I hope that you understood something, you learned something from this video. If so, please like and share, and tell someone something about this channel if you like it. Also, we'll be bringing more videos on Terraform, of how to get started on Terraform, how can you go ahead and do things easily on it very soon. So if you are interested to learn that, please subscribe and hit the bell icon, right? I'll see you again with the next video. Till then, take care, guys. Bye bye.